Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Wow, that intro is wasn't what I expected. I was picking out songs and I'm like, I want something really kind of spooky, but spooky. And I'm like, every horror movie in my brain came in. That's just what it was. Welcome to Mino Mashkiki Babo Babo Blackwater Medicine Podcast. My name is Mel Nadishnakas. I'm from Bear Clan, Makwandotum. Names that the spirits know me as is Bearman. It's Makwanane. And welcome to today's podcast on April 18th already. Wow. 2024. Wow, what happened to all the months? So as I begin to think about this podcast, I started thinking and reflecting on the supernatural, the world that's beyond our world that we all seem to be acknowledging. And so as I start this, I will do my little smudging because every podcast smudging. I don't have matches today. Today I just don't have. I couldn't find my match. Only I would use matches. You know, when I think about this little mini ceremony, I think about all the other ceremonies that are out there that are happening, and this, when you smudge, right away, or even prayer, when you're praying, you're reaching out to something that's not made out of wood, not made out of metal, something that is beyond human understanding. And so when I start thinking about many little ceremony that I do here to start my podcast, I'm always thinking the fact that my soul is reaching out to something that's greater than I am. That's the supernatural. So let us begin this topic. Um, so when you think about ghost stories, when you think about all these things nowadays, when you click on YouTube and other channels out there, um, there's videos that are happening that are people are witnessing things that just don't make any sense. Doors moving, whispers. But this has been going on since the beginning of time, you know. Um, and so when we start thinking about the the other side, we are actually thinking about where does our soul go to in all this matter. And I'm always reflecting on that. It doesn't matter like how much clothes I have, fancy technology I'm using. I'm not taking any of this with me. This is all going to be like someone else's stuff or wherever. But my soul is the only part of me that's mine. That's all mine. And And so when you reach a certain point in your time, you're kind of wondering, like, what's the next big thing? What's going to. So people out there all of a sudden start seeking spirituality and stuff. So once they start doing that, they start kind of realizing that I need to do something with what's out there. Now, um, let's get into it first. Get into this the ghost topic. Um, Ibai, spirit, giveaway term for spirit. There's a couple of terms, but I mean Jibai is the one. When Anishinaabe people do our ceremonies, when we do our prayer, you know, we always say, you know, depending on what area you belong in, the door that leads to the spirit world is what we're always talking about. And I'm always thinking like, even when you're going to these gatherings, you have a sacred fire there. That's a doorway. That's where the spirits come in and out. And Native people have always acknowledged the spirits. They've always acknowledged something that they've never seen or touched, but they always have that in there. And for us to sort of like, when they hear ghost stories, we're like, eh. Sort of true. We're kind of like, yeah, yeah, I had something move in my house the other day and I saw it and it was really scary. And sometimes Native people are like, that's nice. I just went the other day. Just making it a lot harder to joke about these. But here we are, 2024, and technology has gotten so advanced that anytime you look at anything, Google it, on TikTok, social media sites, people out there having experiences that they cannot explain. And now people out there hunting, seeing Sabe, Bigfoot, and other mysterious creatures that are out there. And I have a Sabe story. I do. I do have a Sabe story. I do. Bigfoot. Um, so I was a little boy, and so my grandfather would always do his net things with the fish and stuff like that. And it was starting to get a little dark, so he set it off, and my uncles were there with us, and we're sitting in the boat, and so as we're setting it down there, we can hear this really weird little noise, like some sort of yell. And my uncles, you know what I tell you, they're the kind of people that are not afraid of things. And I think to myself, when they heard that right away, their eyes got really big, and they knew right away that was something that's unnatural. Now they've heard every noise and sound in the forest, so they know what's in there. But this was different, like a weird howl. And so my Matroma says to me, "Oh, go lie down in the canoe, go lie down on the boat." Like down there. And so, anyways, they started paddling. My other uncle had the rifle, shotgun, just to make sure what's out there. Hears it. Like my grandfather said. So I was kind of like, okay, all right, I won't make any noise. I won't make any noise. So what happened after that was for me kind of like an eye opener, you know. And that's my story. That's one of my stories. I basically acknowledge that unknown, and that's what supernatural is acknowledging the unknown. Now I'm gonna twist it a little bit. I'm gonna flip it just enough, where now you're in church and people see miracles everywhere. There's videos out there where the man that walks on water, his statue will move. People have witnessed these things where a stone that doesn't supposed to be alive will move on its own, and people will have witnesses and seen these things. Um, even the mother, the great mother, people that have seen her and touch her and talk to her. I've heard these stories, And I've never questioned them, because you know what? It's just part of how our world is. And as you dig in further with the supernatural, you're starting to hear and see a lot more um these experiences that people are having. These moments where like things now don't make any sense to me because I've witnessed this. Heck, even people are driving along the highway and they're seeing pictures of videos of UFOs, you know? And so as we begin to look at how the supernatural is, it's more realistically. It's more there now, because you would never think that I would see a ghost, or I would see or hear a Bigfoot, or see a UFO, but this stuff is happening everywhere. And that's the part of us human beings is looking at, you know, wow, that questions everything. That questions science, that questions physics, everything, even our senses. You know, people will say, like, I was sitting at home one day and all of a sudden my cat kind of hissed at the corner of the room. Didn't like that room for some odd reason, because animals have that sense. My dog has several times growled in our kitchen. We don't see it. But for me, I'm used to that. I'm used to these things going on, you know. Um, Heck, I remember one time I to sleep at my sister's house. She used to live in one of the apartments up by what's that called there? Academy area. She's lived in these apartments up there. And so I remember sleeping on there, and then all of a sudden I was woken up by someone grabbing my foot, and I was looking up and I seen this shadowy person standing there. And it just walked away. And I was like, okay. It's like, well, yeah, there goes my underwear. But I knew something was in an apartment. I just never thought of it too much. And so when we start looking at our world, our own personal world of our spook story, some people actually don't believe. They're stone real, that they can't believe that something like this exists because they've never witnessed it. And I'm like, you know what? You don't need to actually witness it. You just are aware of it. But what I want to also make a point is what we are afraid of the most. And this is what this podcast is really about, is about not only the supernatural, but what we fear the most. And the moment you think about fear, we're ingrained with it. This is something that's a human natural thing for us, but we amplify it. Okay? So here we go. Pandemic happened. What happened? Everybody went panic shopping because the government says that we're shutting down. And so everybody went panic shopping. They bought everything in the world. And what happened was everybody was afraid. They're fear shopping, but they wouldn't think of surviving, which is interesting. Now, Hollywood has taught us what happens in scenarios that are out there: plagues, world wars, things like that nature. But it doesn't, it should really teach us how to survive these things. That's why a lot of times I'm looking at through YouTube videos, the survivalists out there who are prepared for 10 years. This one guy says, you know what, don't worry. I would forget about you're getting your gases in your vehicles, because gas has to be fresh. And he says once a gas tank goes done, it's not usable. It doesn't work anymore. I didn't know that. I really didn't know that. I thought that was like that was something that your gas is always, but it turns out that a gas, when it doesn't move or something, it stagnates, it just doesn't work anymore. You know. And so this one's watching this channel, this hunter guy says, you know what, instead of investing in bullets, use bows. Learn how to use a bow. Well, like, that actually makes sense. He's teaching his sons in this video slingshots. And those are the weapons that they're using to prepare themselves in case, something happens. And so that's pretty profound. I'm thinking about like your fear, the fear of what you can do. Uh and so as we begin to think about what our fear is, um with the supernatural blended in there, the fear of the unknown. We really don't know what's going on. We really have no clue of what's been happening. And so now we are coming to a point where um it's something. It is really it's like it's the end of the world as we know it. Right? That song. But climate change, the money that the governments are doing to people and all these other things, fear based, even fear based religion and teachings and stuff like that. That's also a form of things that we look at, you know. And I'm always kind of like, I'm pretty solid with my beliefs. I'm pretty solid with that. But then I kind of sometimes hear people talk about doomsday talk, and I'm like, well, we all got to go somewhere. And that's why I always think to myself, your soul is a part of you that is eternal. It's very eternal. And it doesn't stop after you go into there. What the theme of a lot of places and a lot of things are is that death is not the end, but it's always a new beginning. Have you ever thought about that for a second? I mean, you think to yourself like, oh, I'm dead. I'm going to be into this, that. But then all of a sudden, a different form of reality happens, and all of a sudden, you're sitting on a unicorn. Just saying, and you're like, wow, this is the afterlife. I see my dog. I see my cat. I see my aunt. I see my uncle. I see my grandfather. I see the ancestors that Native people are always talking about, the bloodline of all of us that start from where it is. We get every answer we've ever wanted and see through these experiences. And I sometimes I'm like, I have to prepare myself for this thing because there's stuff in there that I'm not really ready for. And I got to tell you, you know what? Woke technology is not going to compare to the big thing. You know, I realize that when I think about these things, um, I think about the people that passed away, those people who have went to the other side. I'm going to see my best friend again. I'm going to see a lot of the people that I said goodbye to, and we're going to make these jokes, and we're going to laugh it up, or we're going to talk like nothing. And then he's going to say, you know what? Here's what we're going to do now. We're here, but what is here? You know, I every so often will come across a clip of near death experiences of what it's like on the other side, how peaceful it really is, and people talk about that, and so it's kind of really interesting listening to these stories about that. For me, on the other hand, I'm always kind of like, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. My ego feathers will be there. My ancestors will be there. My bloodline will be there. The supernatural part of who I am as a person will be there. I mean, you look at also the fact of what happens when justice happens, when you do evil in this world, when you do wrong in this world, when you do hardship to people who are just trying to live. There's a different form of justice that's happened. Now, I've said before, and I'll say it again. You can lie to man all you want. You can lie to everybody else you want about who and what you're all about. But it's those spirits, it's those Jibais, it's those ancestors that see actual truth about what you really are. And that's what really it boils down to, your truth and responsibility. And you're like, well, I'm gonna lie to the fact that my coworker is blah blah blah. And so what happens? You do evil work. But it's those spirits out there that see that. Your ancestors see that. The things that are done in secret will be into the light. That's what the good book says, right? That's what the book says. Truth. They Webin, truth. And you're kind of walking around doing many evil acts, but there's a consequence to that. And that's why the supernatural part of you gets sick. Spiritual sickness happens. People out there who are making money selling the culture will have their justice happen to them. Creator sees that. It says, you took my gifts, you took my teachings, you make money off of this, and you're not supposed to. And so a lot of these things happen. You have to kind of get ready for yourself for the afterlife of what could happen. That's why some people are so prepared. Like they're ready. They're ready today, and they're like, I'm gonna go. I made peace with my demons, and that's a phrase. Peace with my I made peace with who and what I am. I made peace with my monsters. I know I'm wrong. I'm taking responsibility for myself. I know I have evil acts in me. That's what people when they say that they make you know peace with your demons. So you're making peace with yourself. Um, and so that supernatural part of you is healing. That's the healing part. I think sometimes we don't do enough of that for ourselves, but that we heal, but we lash out really intensely to other people, and it's always something that is just it saddens the spirit within us that we know we're not supposed to do it, but yet we do it anyways. I that's why I kind of look at my genre in life, and I'm always kind of aware what to do, what not to do. I mean, I'm responsible with the pipes I carry and the instruments I have and stuff like that. So I'm very aware of that. That's why a lot of times I've always said before, I will never bring this stuff out unless I absolutely have to. And because I'm aware of my responsibility. I'm aware of the fact that if I use my pipe in a negative fashion, that pipe becomes sick. And after that, it doesn't become a healing tool anymore. But there are people in this world that use their items and it causes spiritual sickness. You go to a church, talk bad about somebody. You're in the house of God, right? You're in a sweat lodge and you gossip about somebody. These gathering places are sacred places, and the spirits, they always stop. They never stop even when you're done in the ceremony. You're walking out this door, you're going to work, they still are with you. We have to keep these in mind of the supernatural part of who and what we're all about. That sort of fear-driven thing that I need to do and work. But at the same time, you know what? I want to live my life. I had this really profound uh, teacher, and he says to me, and I love how he says this to me. He says, "Don't ever live your life like a monk. Don't live like you're like that." I said to him, "Why?" Because it's impossible. And he came up with the phrase, "I know one man that walked on water." That's how he says. That's his phrase. He says to me, "You know what? You know how God made you? You know how Creator made you? He made you human. Because if you were a monk, just going to make a little joke of this, you weren't born. You wouldn't be carrying an asshole with you." So that's his little twist. That's how human we are. I laugh at that because it's really funny how I think about that. But that's a humor. So when we are out there and we are doing our 9 to 5, when we decide to help that old little lady across the road, that's not brownie points for Creator or God. That's just being a good person. Being a good person is what we're supposed to be doing every day. Making atones for the wrongs we do, you know. And going out there and saying, "You know what, I did wrong. I'm sorry. I really am." And that's what healing realistically is. Picking and choosing your battles, going out that door is one thing we have to face, but then at the same time, making atones for the wrongs and who and what we did with other, you know. And people don't realize that evil really comes from betraying. true evil is betrayal. That's what it is. And but also true love is to say, you know what? I look at that person and I love that person. The best ever. I got friends who are like that. I got really good friends who are like that. I love them and I miss them. And I think, and I'm always trying to make new friends. I always like making new friends. People I've never met in my life. I like to reach out to them and say, "How you doing? What's going on? Bonjour, hello, oh," because that's the teachings. We're always outreaching to people, and that's one thing we should always try and strive for as people is to always look out for these things. And it's a philosophy that carries with me my whole life. That I'm always trying to help someone out or be with somebody or do what I can. But I've done some pretty awful things to myself too. I've done not some things that I'm not really cool with, But I kind of woke up to a lot of notions because when I was a young kid, I grew up with a lot of guys who are bad guys, a lot of villains, real street villains, real bad guys. I'll tell you, like not to mention names, but I remember one time, my uncle came by my little apartment. He looked at my apartment. He said, "Oh, what the heck you live here for?" "Oh, so that's all I can afford." And he looks at my fridge. He said, "Holy cow, you got nothing in there." It's like, well, I mean, I got noodles. It's like, come on, let's go buy. Let's go buy. I'll go buy you some food. Buy $700 worth of food. Back then, that was a lot. That was a lot of food. So much food I couldn't even cover it in the fridge and stuff like that. And then he sat and talked to me. He says, I'm not going to say nothing about this, but I mean, you got some pretty really nasty friends with you. And you know what? That road that they're taking, that they're traveling, is not going anywhere but death. You'll die soon. I don't want you dying soon. And then I started thinking about that, and I was thinking, and this is really kind of the profound awakening that I had years ago, is that the guys I hung around with back then, um, they're human trafficking with the girls that we knew. That's one of the that's one of the dirty secrets I've ever heard or kept and known. That these guys I knew for years and years and years were legitimate villains. I mean, I never thought. I think to myself, like, when they're buying, how do they afford alcohol if they don't have a job? Right? They're partying every weekend. Little did I realize that some of these girls that they're with, they're selling. And lucky for me, I wasn't involved with that kind of mess, but I was like, oh crap. That's when I made the decision right there and then to stop and not hang out with these guys anymore. Found religion or whatever it is. And that was the best choice I've ever made. That was a complete thing. I said, goodbye, see you guys. I'm going to get a brand new pair of shoes and walk. And that's when I started traveling. I had to make decisions about stuff. I had to make some choices about what I want to do. And I'm not looking back. I never look back on that. The guys I know now, they're dead. They're dead. Their time came. Suicides, drug habits, drug abuse. They're unrecognizable. Um, and I said before, it's about responsibility. The supernatural part of who I am, the spirits know me as Bear Man. The great spirits out there. When I die, I'm not going to be known as Mel. I'm not going to know by my government name from Canada. No, go in. No, the spirits will say, "Oh, bonjour, oh, Bear Man, welcome, welcome home." I always tell people whenever I do naming ceremonies that that's how you're going to be known only as. You're going to be known only through that name. That's why ceremonies through the name is so important. But you also have to have responsibility of carrying that name when you first get it. It's not for you to be like a nun or a priest or someone holy to walk around your life, but just to be aware of your very own responsibility as a person itself, to be a good person, to be whole, to not do damage to other people. And so, I always tell people these days now and say, if they want a naming ceremony, they say, "Oh, that's nice. You're not ready for a name yet. I can't give you a name. But you can go with someone else if you want to," because I've seen where once I get the name, all of a sudden it's cool, it's trendy. I got a name. I got Indian name. I got Indian name. Holy jeez, I got Indian name. No, it's something more than that. Something far more important is to have that. And you know, I remember the name that my grandmother gave me as a kid. It's a phrase. It means squint. You know, squint. That's the because my eyes were kind of little tiny, so I couldn't really see a lot. But that's what my grandmother gave me. Gave me the name Squint because I couldn't see. The phrase is called Nishki. That's the name. That's my baby name. That's my grandmother's nickname for me. Everybody, the elders used to call me that too. It was back in the day. It was a kid, Nishki. Um, and that's a pretty much a name. You know, I love that name. That's my baby name. That's my name. I had the supernatural part of us also fearing is also, to tell ourselves is that we need not to fear things. I need to think for myself. I need to be myself. I need to see who I am as a myself, but not use myself as a weapon to other people. That's why sometimes people always say to me, "Oh, come we don't go to Sundance? Come we don't go to Sundance? You don't got these things here, you know?" I said, "Does that matter? I'm a spiritual man. I know Creator. I know Creator, and that's what it is. We need to not show off our own spiritual, like, just because it's funny because I know people who are religious and they read the book, and you ask them a page and they'll say, okay, wait, let me look through my book. No, you don't need your book. If you know your book, if you study that enough, you should be able to know the verse of that. you know what is the word of that says to you? And they'll say something that everybody knows, John 3:16 or something like that. But I say, no, give me something else. you know My favorite verse is Ecclesiastes 1, chapter 2, I think. Chapter 1 or 2. And it says, vanity of vanity, all is vanity. Meaningless, meaningless, all is meaningless. That whole chapter, that whole book of Ecclesiastes is my favorite book because it talks about everything we're doing under the sun, every work, everything we're doing. Um, and it also talks about us being everyday people. Most times I'm always kind of wondering, like, how do we improve ourselves? How do we become better people? That's a tough one. That honestly is a tough one to think about. You make amends. I think about people that I let go, um, and I reflect on for the years of being with them and hanging out with them, and that's the way how the river ends. That's how sometimes whenever I hear about my teachings, not all water goes to the ocean. Some goes to swamp, some goes to a little riverbank, but they all don't lead to that big ocean. So not everything works out as it's supposed to be. And here I am. I think to myself, like he's right. Not all the rivers connect. We have multiple rivers. That's why sometimes I always kind of wonder, like, the people I meet today, are they aware of their own supernatural persons, who they are as people, the spiritual person within them? That's what supernatural really means. Spirit person within them. Reflect on that for a while, because I want you guys to understand that I try to cover stuff about fear. I try to cover things about spirits, but realistically, I try to make sure that every one of us understands that what we're about as people. Do good and be good. That's why sometimes, that's the hardest part of being human and being a person, is doing good and being good. That part of us that's a little blackness in there. You ever heard the story of the two wolves? Which one you feed the first? People always feed that dark wolf. That's just how they are. But hey, I'm not the judge. I'm not that man who walks on water. No going. I'm not even close to that. But live your life as accordingly. Take responsibility. Anyways, I want to thank you guys for my show. This is quite an interesting topic. I will tend to do a lot more shows. I know everybody's been asking me I should do more shows. I really do. I think maybe I gotta find the time for it. So when I get more time for it, I will definitely do more shows later on. And maybe this little logo that you guys see, yeah, there it is. When you see that logo, maybe I'll make a shirt out of that and people walk around with my shirt or stickers or something like that. It'd be pretty cool. Anyways, go back to that ghost log. See you guys again.